Samanam te sammanam vapi putraka marasya te sammanam vapi putraka kumarasya shaktasya kridanadishu Narada uvacha Sadmanam vapi putraka Lakshayama kumarasya Dasya kridanadishu Matidis Narada uvacha Nadunapi avamanam te Sammanam vapi putraka Lakshayama kumarasya Saktasya kridanadishu Narada uvacha Nadunapi avamanam te Sammanam vapi putraka Lakshayama kumarasya Shaktasya kridanadishu What? Go on. Narada uvacha Nadunapi avamanam te Sammanam vapi putraka Lakshayama kumarasya Saktasya kridanadishu. What translation? Please repeat. Narada uvacha. The great sage Narada said, Na, not, Aduna, just now, Api, although, Avamanam, insult, Te, unto you, Sammanam, offering respects, Va, certainly, Putraka, my dear boy, Lakshayamaha, I can see, Kumarasya, of boys like you, Saktasya, being attached, Kridana Adishu, to sports and frivolities. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, by Charnarvinda, Bhaktivedanta, Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation. The great sage Narada told Dhruva, my dear boy, you are only a little boy whose attachment is to sports and other frivolities. Why are you so affected by words insulting your honor? Purport. Ordinarily, if a child is rebuked as a rascal or fool, he smiles and does not take such insulting words very seriously. Similarly, if words of honor are offered, he does not appreciate them. But in the case of Dhruva Maharaj, the Kshatriya spirit was so strong that he could not tolerate a slight insult from his stepmother, which injured his Kshatriya prestige. It's a short purport. I'll read the next verse also. Vikalpe vidyamanepi nahi asantosha hetavaha pumso moham rite vinna yalloke nija karma bihi. Translation. My dear Dhruva, if you feel that your sense of honor is another feature of the illusory energy, every living entity is controlled by his previous actions, and therefore there are different varieties of life for enjoying or suffering. Purport. In the Vedas, it is said that the living entity is always uncontaminated and unaffected by material association. The living entity gets different types of material bodies because of his previous fruitive actions. If, however, one understands the philosophy that as a living spirit soul, he has an affinity for neither suffering nor enjoyment, then he is considered to be a liberated person. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 1854, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma. When one is actually situated on the transcendental platform, he has nothing for which to lament and nothing for which to hanker. Narada Rishi first of all wanted to impress upon Dhruva Maharaj that he was only a child. He should not have been affected by words of insult or honor. And if he were so developed as to understand honor and insult, then this understanding should have been applied in his own life. He should have known that honor and dishonor are both destined only by one's previous actions. Therefore, one should not be sorry or happy under any circumstance. Omagyanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shiyuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivashadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hare Hare Krishna. I'll read the translation again. The great sage Narada told Dhruva, my dear boy, you are only a little boy whose attachment is to sports and other frivolities. Why are you so affected by words insulting your honor? My dear Dhruva, if you feel that your sense of honor has been insulted, you still have no cause for dissatisfaction. This kind of dissatisfaction is another feature of the illusory energy. Every living entity is controlled by his previous actions, and therefore there are varieties of life for enjoying or suffering. Chapter title: Dhruva Maharaj leaves home. Hare Krishna. So just to give some background, Dhruva Maharaj, he once approached his father. What is Dhruva Maharaj's father's name? Uttanapada. So on one side of his father's lap, his stepbrother, Uttama, was playing. So Dhruva Maharaj, barely 5 years old, he also decided to play on the other lap of his father. And as he tried to climb on his lap, his stepmother rebuked and insulted him, saying that it's natural for him to desire to play with his father. However, because he was not fortunate enough to be born from her womb, she told him, "You are not qualified. And if you at all want to play on the lap of your father, go and pray to the Supreme Lord, with whose blessings you will be fortunate enough to be born from my womb in the next life. Then you can play." So much to play on the lap. So Dhruva Maharaj got very insulted. So he ran crying to his mother Suniti. And much to his surprise, he saw his mother also crying. And she consoled him that your father Uttanapad has 2 wives. The second wife is very dear, who is Suruchi. Your father is actually ashamed to even call me as his wife. So in this situation, first advice which she gives to Dhruva Maharaj is, do not desire anything bad for Suruchi. It's natural. If someone has insulted us, to desire something wrong, something bad for them. So that's the first advice she gives. Why? Because if we desire something wrong for the other person, it may affect other person, may or may not only. But what is guaranteed is, it will affect us. Prabhupada writes in Bhagavad Gita that one should learn to tolerate provoking situations, otherwise even a slight anger can contaminate one's whole body. You will feel contaminated if we are sensible enough. You know, when we sit and chant, have you seen in movies, artwork, you will see sages holding their fingers like this. How many of you have seen? Do you know why they do that? When we sit and chant, we tend to sleep, right? But if our body is light enough, literally, like, every part of our body feels the pulse, right? You can feel the pulse. Some places it's more, you can feel it even easier. Here. But I've seen in movies. That's where they test. I also have seen in movies. Same way, if you do this, literally we are short circuiting actually here. So you will feel the pulse. If your body is light enough, and that pulse will actually keep you from falling asleep. So that's why they do. Okay, this is like short circuiting. You will feel the pulse between both. Then that won't actually let you feel. But in order to do that, you can't be in like gross mentality. Nothing happening. We need to be in that frequency. Very, very light. Completely free from any malice, any other thought. Completely focusing on the holy name. Then we'll be able to feel it. So, if somebody is so grossly materialistic, even if they feel angry, it may not affect them. But somebody who is serious about Krishna consciousness, they will actually feel it. Yes, this thought is bad. Madhavendra Puri, when he goes to Ramuna to see how much or how nicely they prepare Amrita Keli, the famous kheer to serve Gopinath, he desired, if only I get to taste a little bit of Mahaprasad. That's all he desired. But he felt, what a contaminating thought. We live in that contamination, right? Always. So he feels realized knowledge. So he feels like, what a thought. He condemned himself and he just walked away from there. You will come across instances when great poets, when they actually write, Jayadev Goswami, when he writes that Krishna worships the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani, he thought like, he felt himself contaminated to go take bath in Ganga. And came back only to find that it is indeed true. Endorsed by Supreme Lord himself in his own handwriting. So, here Prabhupada says, if we harbor even a little bit of anger, little bit of malice, that would contaminate us. But again, in order to feel that contamination, one should be serious in the practice of bhakti. Otherwise, it's difficult. You will come across grossly materialistic people, demons. They boast about their prowess, and they would insult. They will go on throwing tirage of insults, one after the other, be it against Supreme Lord or against devotees, without feeling affected by that. When the descendants of Sagar Maharaj, Amsuman, Dilip, 60,000 sons of Sagar Maharaj, when they go down to the lower planetary system and they see the sacrificial horse, they wrongly conclude that it was Kapila Dev who had stolen the horse. Wrongly concluding that, they start to harbor bad thoughts. Let us kill him. And they start to even raise the war cry, raise the weapons. The leader of the 60,000 sons is saying, let us go kill the Supreme Lord. And as they rise, Shukadeva Goswami explains, they were so angry that the anger increased their body temperature and it burnt them to ashes. Simply by feeling angry. So Suniti's first instruction to her son is, we can't control how the world treats us. We can't control how other people behave with us. What do we have in our control is how we act, how we react. So she said, do not harbor anything bad. It is natural. If somebody treats us so bad, it's natural for us to treat them also same way. So as devotees practicing Krishna consciousness, we need to know to choose the battle and to choose the enemy. There is a famous phrase. We can't go about fighting with anyone and everyone. We can't go about, we should not fight with anyone. Let me clarify that. We need to choose our battle. That means we have to understand what is it that we prioritize in our life. Our priorities need to be very clear. And we need to know who we are fighting against. If we are not, then it's very hard to practice bhakti in a proper state of mind. Many times you will see when people start to practice Krishna consciousness, they will come to this wrong conclusion. You know what, even karmis behave much better. Being with devotees is very hard. And I agree. And I know you all secretly also agree. It is difficult. Who said it's not? We are just a bunch of rebels, and I'm the rebel leader. Because rest of the world is going in one direction, we are all rebelling going in the other direction, right? What do we expect? Peace and harmony? It will come eventually. But where we start, there will be chaos only. So people wrongly conclude that like, okay, moment I actually pick up the beats and chant Hare Krishna, everything is going to be a bed of rose. It's not. So Dhruva Maharaj, he gets this first advice, not to desire anything bad for one good advice. Chanakya Pandit says, gold, even if you find in filthy place, you should pick it up, wash and use it in service of Krishna. So here Suniti actually tells to Dhruva Maharaj, even though she had insulted you, she has given one good advice, which is to worship the Supreme Lord. And then she quotes, based on her experience, she says, your grandfather and great-grandfather, Brahma's son is Swayambhuva Manu. Swayambhuva Manu is his grandfather. Great-grandfather is Brahma himself. So Suniti tells to Dhruva Maharaj, your grandfather, which is Swayambhuva Manu, and great-grandfather, which is Lord Brahma, they attained the exalted position only by worshipping the Supreme Lord. So you also should worship the Supreme Lord. So now Dhruva Maharaj gets the answer. Okay, one person who can give me, who can fulfill my desire to have a kingdom greater than even my great-grandfather. How is it possible? If we think about it, right, Brahma is the original created being. he, in many ways, created the 14 planetary system. The structure was there, framework was there. He populated it. He is the topmost personality in this whole universe. How can someone get something greater than that? If you think about it, it's actually not possible. But Krishna still makes the impossible possible. How did Krishna eventually fulfills that? By creating spiritual world inside material world, because that's the only thing which could be potentially greater than even Satyaloka. So he gets this advice and he goes to the forest. He don't know who Vishnu is. He don't know who to ask. Introducing Narada Muni. One personality who comes in all the 12 cantos. Even Shukadev Goswami, the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam, comes only in 2nd canto. Narada Muni comes in all the 12. So Narada Muni comes. Narada Muni, in one sense, he is related to Dhruva Maharaj as his grandfather. Because Narada Muni is also son of Brahma, Swayambhuva Manu is also son of Brahma. I was once thinking, Swayambhuva Manu had 3 daughters and 2 sons. Who are they? What are the 3 daughters? Akuti, Prashuti, Devahuti. And then 2 sons? Priyavrata and Uttanapada. 5 of them. Sati, she is daughter of who? And Prashuti. That makes Dhruva Maharaj cousin of Prashuti. Dhruva Maharaj is son of Uttanapada. So if you look at the genealogical table, you will find interesting relationships. So here Narada Muni is on the level of his grandfather actually. Because he is sons of Lord Brahma himself. You are only a little boy whose attachment is to sports and other frivolities. Why are you so affected by words insulting your honor? So first thing Narada Muni is trying to do here is to ease the situation in which Dhruva Maharaj is finding himself in. Mitigate the anxiety, the pain which Dhruva Maharaj is feeling within his heart. He is saying, don't take it seriously. You are just a boy. And Prabhupada says, usually a little boy, when they are rebuked as rascal or fool, they smile. When they are given appreciation also, they smile. So Prabhupada says, in either case, they usually don't take either of them seriously. Be it any praise, be it any rebuttal. So Prabhupada says here, Narada Muni gave that advice to Dhruva Maharaj. Why are you taking it seriously? You are after all a 5-year-old boy. But then he is presenting the other side of the argument, which is, my dear Dhruva, if you feel that your sense of honor has been insulted, now if Dhruva Maharaj thinks, actually, you know what, I may be a 5-year-old boy, but I'm a Kshatriya. If you read Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks about the different qualities of the 4 Varna. Shauryam, Tejo, Dhriti, Dakshyam, Yuddhe Chapi Apalayanam, Danam, Ishvara Bhavascha, Shatra Karma Svabhavajam. Shauryam, heroism. Tejo, power. Dhriti, determination. Dakshyam, one who is very expert or resourcefulness. Yuddhe Chapi Apalayanam. Apalayanam means running away from battle, which means courage in battle. Danam, generosity. Ishvara Bhavascha. Normally we use Ishvara Bhava, Ishvara Oham Ahambohi. In a negative sense, Ishvara Bhava here refers to leadership qualities. So 7 qualities Krishna mentions. Shatra Karma Svabhavajam. These are the natural inherent qualities of somebody who is a Kshatriya. So here, Dhruva Maharaj is acting as a Kshatriya, even though he is just a 5-year-old boy. So here Narada Muni is saying, my dear Dhruva, if you feel that your sense of honor has been insulted, you still have no cause for dissatisfaction. Why? This kind of dissatisfaction is another feature of the illusory energy. That brings us a question. Is acting based on one's nature good or bad? Because normally we are told, you engage in services that suits your nature. You act based on your nature. If Dhruva Maharaj as a Kshatriya is acting based on his nature, then look at what Narada Muni is saying. If you feel that your sense of honor has been insulted, you still have no cause for dissatisfaction, because this kind of dissatisfaction is another feature of illusory energy. All of us, when we are born in this world, we are endowed with the certain qualities, certain nature. It's a good starting point for us to do anything. But if we stay conditioned in the same nature, that's a problem. Even in bhakti, if you think about it, in youth class, there was a question that was actually asked. Is Alan Prabhu here? He is not here. He was giving the presentation. Question was, when we practice bhakti, we are told, chant Hare Krishna so that you can go back to Godhead. But then you come across verses also where it is said, like, Na kutaschana bibhyati, Narayana parasarve na kutaschana bibhyati, Swarka apavarka narakeshu api tulyartha darshinaha. If somebody is a devotee, for them it doesn't matter whether they are in heavenly kingdom or hellish planet, it doesn't matter. So how do we reconcile these two? On one hand, the emphasis is given, chant Hare Krishna and go back to spiritual world. But on the other hand, the qualities of pure devotees is given such that it doesn't matter to them where they are. Now, which one should we aspire for? What do you think? Should we aspire to go back to Godhead, or should we not bother? How many of you think we should aspire to go back to Godhead? Put your hand up. How many of you think we should not bother? Put your hand up. You are not allowed to put hand up for both. How many of you think we should not bother whether we go back to Godhead or not, but we should just do whatever service that Krishna asks us to do? Once in a morning walk, actually a couple of devotees, they come to Prabhupada and they tell to Prabhupada, we like distributing your books, we love this service, and we don't even want to leave this service to go back to spiritual world. This is all we want to do for you forever. Prabhupada acknowledged that that's a very highly elevated level of consciousness. That's the best. Kapaladev also, you will see, he tells that to Mother Devahuti. My devotees, they take so much pleasure in doing devotional service for me that even if I award them 4 types of liberation, come live with me, come to Salokya, come to my planet, be with me anywhere. So, in the beginning, as time progresses, as we become mature in Krishna consciousness, as we advance, we should move away from that conditioning to come to the platform that we can do anything and everything for Krishna. Prabhupada, he cooked, he cleaned, he conducted marriages, he printed books, distributed books, he dealt with total karmis, he preached, he guided, he did everything. Supreme Lord Krishna, he gave instructions, acted like Brahmana. He also drove chariot like a Shudra. He fought the war like a Kshatriya. And he protected the cows like a Vaishya. So when we come across instructions in the Shastras, some instructions may look too hard for us to follow. But actually, Krishna is not asking us to do something which he didn't do. When Prabhupada says, do this, be surrendered, Prabhupada is not asking us to do something which he didn't do either. He was doing everything. So for us, in the beginning stage, when we actually practice, yes, somewhere we have to start. I remember one class, Nectar of Devotion class, given by Yadunandan Swami Maharaj. He's always say, Yadunandan Swami Maharaj here, I think 2007. He gave one beautiful example. He said, if you look at how they make sculptures, they usually make a mold. He said in some instances they make mold with wax. And using that mold, they then, a wax material, and using that mold, they will then get a layer of metal coated in that. So the layer of metal that goes covering that mold, it's the actual statue. And he said, once the mold does its job to actually make that, because wax will actually melt much quicker, they will slightly heat it and the whole wax will actually melt out. And the sculpture will be there ready, hollow inside. He said our senses are like that. When we practice bhakti, when we engage in service of Krishna, we engage our senses, we engage our natural qualities, that is like wax. But the real thing is, this is material. From material, using this material thing only, you can actually spiritualize the senses eventually. So much so that at some point, when all of our senses are spiritualized, ihasya harerdasya karmana manasagira nikilashvapi avastashu jivan mukta sauchite. Even though we are embodied in this material body, we will be known as jivan mukta if each one of our senses is spiritualized. If every activity that we do is spiritualized. So starting point can be anywhere, but if we are stuck there, then it's a problem. Then we'll always stay materially conditioned. Because based on our nature, there are some concessions given. Okay, you are good at it, just to do this. But if we use that as an excuse, Prabhupada said, spread this movement. Oh, I am very unqualified. Who said we are qualified to even? There is nothing about qualification or order of Srila Prabhupada. For that, we can do everything. We can clean the temple. We can raise funds. We can rebuild this temple. We can distribute books. We can preach. We can cook. We can serve. We can do anything. But if we go to this nature and be situated there, then that's a problem. I was once talking to a boy, and he told me he's practicing bhakti now. He's initiated also. But he told me in his young age, young means like 4-5 years before, from the point when I was actually talking to him. He said his family went through a lot of trouble. And he said his parents divorced. And that pushed him to take a lot of bad habits, including drugs and everything. And he said, now I'm a devotee, but I'm finding it very hard to forgive my parents. Every time I think about them, I get so angry, so upset. Because they didn't maintain their relationship properly, it affected us. He has a sister, both of us, he was saying. So he was saying, I don't know how to come out of this one now. Now I'm a devotee. On one hand, we read. Prabhupada, time and again, he repeats that we should respect our elders. We should follow the etiquette. We should show. But then he was saying, I have this challenge. I asked him, do you think you did any mistake in life? He said, yes. How big a mistake? He said, like, yeah, worse mistakes. And I asked him, do you think Radha Gopinath forgave you? He said, I hope. I said, are you initiated? He said, yes. That means technically you get a brand new life. All your karma, everything is gone. So your spiritual master has given a new lease of life. Now, how do you feel? If you put hand on your heart, how do you feel? He said, like, I feel very light. I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I said, how would you like if Radha Gopinath is actually holding you still on trial, saying, you know what, you did that before, you did this one before, you know how much you offended? How would you feel? He said, yeah, pretty bad. He was smiling. So I said, your parents, they did something wrong. Yes, it's not ideal. But what you can do is, somehow or other, even undeservingly, you got the mercy. And they are not still fortunate enough to get that mercy. That's all. Least you can do is, at least don't be the cause of anxiety for your parents. At least that much you can do. You don't need to forgive. You don't need to go reconcile. But at least a starting point is, there is a certain way how Krishna had reciprocated with you. At least a tiny part of that you can do that with your parents. Because Krishna overlooked all your faults, all your offenses. And he gave only mercy to you. Now I know we are not Krishna. Being God is very difficult. But at least we can do our tiny part. At least stop hating. At least stop looking at them like they are criminals. At least be as much as Krishna has forgiven us. At least we can start somewhere. His parents are both initiated like this. You quote you come across in Instagram, Facebook. You can't go back and change your life how you started. You can't go back and change the beginning. You can start from where you are and finish the ending. Nice line. I always think, when cricketers go to bat, this is very important. How many wickets fell before? Don't worry about it. What matters is who's going to finish the match in their favor. So we can't go back and change the beginning. We can start from where we are and we can finish the ending. So here, Dhruva Maharaj is getting affected because of his Kshatriya quality. Now we can't brush aside completely saying that quality is bad. When I said we should never be limited to that, I said only limited to that. Doesn't mean we should abandon our nature. If somebody's nature is to be a leader, one should not abandon that. Rather, one should engage that in the service of the Lord. But if one says, I'm a leader, I'm a Kshatriya, I will only do this, I can only lead, I won't raise funds, I won't clean, that's Shudra's job. Collecting money, that's Vaishya's job. Teaching, giving classes, that's Brahmana's job. That's the problem. Because if we stay holding on to our condition, then that alone is good enough to, or bad enough to bind us back in this material world. We need to go past the conditioning. Whole point here is, whatever we have to engage it in Krishna's service. Prahlad Maharaj's instruction, Manyedana Abhijana Rupa Tapashri Taujas Teja Prabhava Bala Paurusha Buddhi Yoga Naradhanaya Hi Bhavanti Parasya Pumso Bhaktya Tutosha Bhagavan Gaja Yutapaya. Prahlad Maharaj lists 12 ways how you cannot satisfy the Lord. Manye, I consider, in my opinion, Dhana, you cannot satisfy the Supreme Lord by wealth. Dhana Abhijana, aristocracy. Rupa, by being beautiful. Manye Dhana Abhijana Rupa Tapa, by your austerity. Shruta, by wisdom. Ojas, sensory prowess. Teja, effulgence. Power. Prabhava, influence. Teja, Prabhava, Bala, strength. Buddhi, intelligence. Yoga, mystic power. He lists these 12 qualities and he says, this is not how you can. Naradhanaya hi bhavanti parasya pumso. You cannot please the Supreme Lord by any of these 12 qualities. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. If you analyze these 12 qualities, you will find. But then how can you please the Supreme Lord? Bhaktya tutosha Bhagavan. Only by doing devotional service can one please the Supreme Lord. What's the proof? Gajayutapaya. He gives Gajendra as example. What does an elephant know? Just to pluck the flower and offer it. Prabhupada's instructions, they are simple, straightforward. There is no ambiguity in Prabhupada's instructions. How many of you have read some line of Prabhupada and he says, and you think, I'm not quite clear what Prabhupada is saying here. Prabhupada says the same thing over and over again. From first verse of Bhagavad Gita till last verse. Prabhupada, Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre, Samaveda, Yuyutsava. Krishna hasn't spoken yet. Arjuna hasn't spoken yet. Sanjaya hasn't spoken yet. Dhritarashtra, the only verse he spoke, Prabhupada packs all Krishna conscious philosophy in the purport. And there was nothing Krishna conscious in what Dhritarashtra spoke, correct? Mamaka Pandavaseva Kimma Kurvata Sanjaya. After my sons and sons of Pandu, having assembled on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? Prabhupada doesn't even wait, because Prabhupada concern is, if somebody just opens the book, reads only that verse, they'll still become a devotee. Be it Karma Yoga, this is how Prabhupada explains. Here the most, when you read Mahabharata, how many of you have read Mahabharata? Many times when you read, you'll get very angry on Dhritarashtra. You know why? Prabhupada is preaching even through him. Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre. Prabhupada takes the Dharma Kshetra and he preaches whole Krishna consciousness just with that one word. So there is nothing ambiguous in what Prabhupada has said. Prabhupada never said anything mystical. Prabhupada never said Bhakti Yoga is a very mystical process. It is a mystical process, but the instructions of Prabhupada is very simple and straightforward. Very, very crystal clear. It is in black and white. All we have to do is take it, read it, assimilate it and follow it. That's all we have to do. If we start to put our own spin on things, selectively picking, then that's where the problem comes. Once one disciple asked Prabhupada, what pleases you the most? He was a book distributor. Prabhupada replied back, if you love Krishna, that will please me the most. Prabhupada could have easily said, if you distribute books, then that would have become our single activity for the entire movement forever. Having said that, Prabhupada in many places said, that's the only way to please me, about book distribution. Why Prabhupada had so much attraction for book distribution? Because that is one of the two instructions which his Guru Maharaj gave him. So Prabhupada always emphasized. But we see everything else. You clean, you cook, you distribute books, you sing, you dance, attend Guru Puja, eat prasad, respect the devotees. Everything will eventually increase our love for Krishna only. So everything pleases Prabhupada. But if we selectively pick and say Prabhupada wants us to love Krishna, so what are you going to do? I'm just going to speak loving words to a photo of Krishna for the rest of my life. You understand? Now you are stretching it to one other extreme. When Prabhupada said boil the milk, if somebody stretches that to other extreme, so Prabhupada said boil the milk, I'll only keep reading for the rest of my life. Now that's a problem. Okay, we take care of ourselves. What about others? How are we going to help other people? Where is the spirit of Prabhupada's instruction? Something which is so obvious. In every activity which Srila Prabhupada did, the compassion. How are we going to be that instrument of compassion in the hands of Srila Prabhupada? First, we need to stop quoting selectively. Yes, Prabhupada said everything is important. Prabhupada said, yes, we need to, our love for Krishna, whatever that increases our love for Krishna, that will please Srila Prabhupada. True. But what is also true is, book distribution pleases Prabhupada the most. What is also true is, every activity which Srila Prabhupada did at the advanced age of 80 is simply to show compassion to all the fallen conditioned souls. The time when people would retire to the Dham, Prabhupada started his career. And Prabhupada was saying in one place, I wasted 7 years of my life in Vrindavan. You get shocked. 7 years of my life wasted in Vrindavan. First thing, Prabhupada didn't waste. Second thing, how can being in Vrindavan one can consider waste? This is Prabhupada's extreme expression of his compassion. 7 years, Prabhupada feels, I wasted not giving compassion out to the whole world in full. Which is also not true, because Prabhupada was still writing, going to Delhi, distributing books, everything he was doing. Still he was saying. So we can see the spirit of the instructions. Then it becomes easy. When we are honest with ourselves, when we have that integrity, when we study the Shastras, when we have the integrity, when we hear the instructions of Prabhupada and follow, then everything becomes smooth. Otherwise, if we pick and choose, this is what Prabhupada wanted us to do. You will hear sometimes even devotees quote that to justify what they want to do. Is there one thing which Prabhupada didn't want us to do in Krishna consciousness? But if we take a tiny part and blow it and make a whole philosophy out of it, that's where the problem comes. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, how Apasampradaya starts. He says, if you take a very extraordinary activity of an exalted soul and you make it as a norm, extraordinary activity of an exalted soul, and make it as a norm, then that becomes, he says, that is the cause of Apasampradaya. Let's say if somebody tries to imitate Madhavendra Puri, Bhoga is getting prepared, they start to eat in their mind. I would like to taste that so I can cook for my deity. I would like to eat that so I can. Forget about deity, after some time we'll only be thinking about it. Understand? Like that, if we see extraordinary activity of an exalted soul and try to imitate that, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, that's the starting point of an Apasampradaya. This is how Apasampradaya started. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he appeared just 2 generations after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, 2-3 generations. During Bhaktivinoda Thakur's time, there were 13 Apasampradaya. Can you believe it? We are in what? 2024. 500 years later. So we have to be very, very careful. When we read Srila Prabhupada's instructions, it's very clear, crystal clear. Yes, based on our nature, we have to start working, but we can't be stuck in that point, take undue advantage of that point. We can't say, Prabhupada said here that we should work based on our nature. Whose nature here is to distribute books? Whose nature here is to sing? How? Clean. Talking to strangers. Even dealing with, devotees sitting right next to you. Look at each other. Many people, we all know, I would have never, spoken even a word with this person, if only I'm not a devotee, Nobody will actually come and question us. Nobody will come and ask us, hey, you didn't distribute book, you didn't do this. That chastity we need to have for Srila Prabhupada. Radha Gopinath did everything for us. Then why hold back and talk about our nature? Philosophy, stretching it just for our own personal sense gratification. If you're honest with ourselves, we'll recognize that and act and be completely fluid. Be a total flexible instrument in the hands of Srila Prabhupada. Or if we want to just play very, very safe, very, very cozy, then we'll keep quoting our nature forever. But then we have to understand it's not our nature that's gonna take us back to Godhead. When Krishna says Sarva Dharman Parityajya, he is talking about even Dharma, any other Dharma other than Bhagavad Dharma. He is saying Parityajya. What to speak of our nature? So it's a good starting point, but we should not be limiting ourselves with that. We don't need to let go of that either. If somebody's nature is to do something, we have to do, but we can't say nothing else is my nature. If the devotee who preached Krishna consciousness to us thought that way, we wouldn't be sitting here today, correct? So it's not having one's nature is wrong. We can still engage that in service of Krishna, but we should not limit ourselves. We should not give that as an excuse not to do whatever service that's going to please to Srila Prabhupada in the name of, oh sorry, that's not my nature. And let's recognize the fact that almost everything that we do in bhakti, like dancing in public, that was the last thing I thought I'll do in my life. If a brand new person comes to the temple room during Arati, I know exactly what goes on in their mind, because after some time, you start to feel weird. Okay, I've come now, might as well do this. And then soon you will see other people standing and you will say, what's wrong with you guys? Come join, you feel like that. So nature, it's a good starting point, but we should not just stay stuck in that point. I'll stop there. Any questions or comments? Krishna says in the Chaturshloki to Lord Brahma that whatever that you see in connection to me, that alone is reality. Whatever where you don't see the connection with the Supreme Lord, he says that is the illusory energy. For a sadhaka, when they start to practice Krishna consciousness, they would clearly set a boundary. Okay, whenever I go to the class, I'll behave like a devotee. Whenever I go to temple, I'll behave like a devotee. And I have my personal life. Krishna, that's your boundary. You stay that side. I'll do this way. And here we deliberately don't want to think about Krishna. We are deliberately separating Krishna away from our existence. That's illusory energy. So Krishna says anything that we do in life has to be connected to him. Even as devotees. How we are spending our time. Prabhupada speaks so much on avyartha kalatvam. How when we advance in Krishna consciousness, we are very wary about not wasting even a single moment and spending every time, every moment for the pleasure of Krishna. So for a new person, as well as for practicing devotees, question we should ask ourselves is, whatever activity that we do, how is it this gonna please Sri Sri Radha Gopinath? If it is going to please Sri Sri Radha Gopinath, yes, that is reality. If our so-called devotional activity has got no connection to what Prabhupada asked us to do, even though it may be a devotional activity, it's a waste of time. It's a sense gratification only. Because the definition, let's go to Prahlad Maharaj's instruction. Manye dhanabhijana rupa tapashritojas. Is austerity bad? No. But Prahlad Maharaj is saying austerity cannot please the Supreme Lord. That doesn't mean we should always shun austerity. There are austerities that please the Supreme Lord. Follow Ekadashi, for example. But then follow Ekadashi means not just fasting from grain. That is okay. But we should, by cutting down on bodily necessities, we increase our service for the Supreme Lord. As I said, the spirit of the instruction. When Prabhupada said, okay, all of you come together, chant together, we can't take that alone as the goal of our life. Then what about outside people? Get everyone also to come and chant together. Reach out to people who don't normally have the opportunity to come and chant together. That's the spirit of the instruction. If we take it just to suit our own convenience, then that's illusory energy. We deliberately write off a brand new bhakta, wherein they clearly demarcate that this is for you, Krishna, and this is for me on a more gross level. But as we practice Krishna consciousness, we become expert in how even subtly push Krishna out of us, subtly push even Srila Prabhupada away from us, by not grossly going away, but subtly going away by shunning the spirit of that instruction. Understand? So that's how, so that part is something we need to be very cautious about. Prabhupada never said any ambiguous way. It's very, very crystal clear. We have to simply read, we have to simply follow. That's all. Whatever our authorities say, we follow. If we put our own twist on, we're singing, Prabhupada was upset. Prabhupada said, I didn't teach you. But they said, Prabhupada, but this is mentioned in this Shastra. Prabhupada said, you see, there is something called bona fide and there is something called authorized. But if our Acharyas haven't endorsed it or haven't sung that, then Prabhupada said, that's not authorized. Just because something is bona fide doesn't mean we should take. Being bona fide is not good enough. Prabhupada says that. But if you see, generally there is a trend, because we have so much time, because we shun the spirit of Srila Prabhupada's instruction, which is to spread the movement. But we have Radha Gopinath. Now what is going to pick up a piece of paper and put? I told him, if I have 2 minutes time, I would like to clean this temple, because that's going to please Radha Gopinath more. Worshipping Shaligram Shila is just going to be for my sense gratification. Radical statement, but that's the way it is. That's how Srila Prabhupada wanted it good, and I have time. It's all about, we need to feel grateful for what Srila Prabhupada has given us, and we need to read the instructions, which is in black and white, and we have to simply follow. Without reading between lines, without twisting the meaning. That's all we have to do. Okay? Any other question? Wax is like the senses. You start with that, but understanding it's not the material senses that's going to go with us forever. Because in this analogy, the wax mold is like our material senses. The actual sculpture that you have made with those mold, that's like our spiritualized senses. The purpose of our material senses, and for that matter even our own nature, is just a starting point to spiritualize whatever activity that we do. Once we do that, the nature has done its job, it has its shelf life, you shun it. So I was telling, but our nature is, we still like to hold. If you see the day when he fights with the Jayatratha, description is given when he goes to attack Jayatratha, that day Duryodhana knew that if only today alone we protect Jayatratha, at the end of the day, Arjuna couldn't fulfill his vow. Because of that, he would die. Because that was his vow, that he would enter into fire. That was the vow he took, because previous day Abhimanyu was killed. So Arjuna takes the vow, tomorrow whoever who is the cause of the death of my son, I will kill by sunset. If I don't kill, then I will enter into fire. So next day Arjuna comes, Duryodhana stops all department, gets everyone here. Description in Mahabharata says, when Arjuna comes in Arjuna's own words, he says, the army was assembled in a formation where it was 20 miles wide, 40 miles deep. And Jayatratha was after that 40 mile, protected by all the Maharathis around. So then Krishna asks him, how are we going to do? Then Arjuna tells to Krishna, well, when I have you, what I've got to worry? Then Krishna says, okay, let's try. And Krishna literally mows through the army, and as he goes, Arjuna starts to kill. And they go halfway through. Already half a day is gone. Arjuna goes so fighting non-stop. Arjuna is still fresh. His horses get tired. So then Krishna tells to Arjuna, hey Gudakesh, your horses are tired now. We need to do something. Then Arjuna jumps off the chariot, fighting. Then Krishna OS. Now you read, laughs, looking at his prowess. And then Krishna then unyokes the horse, sits them. Krishna massages the wound. And the horses feel very rejuvenated. They drink water, take a nap. All the while Arjuna is still fighting, non-stop. And then finally Krishna says, all right Arjuna, we are ready now. Then Arjuna releases another astra. The whole thing gets lifted off again. And then our capacity is hold the beat and don't drop when you chant. When you eat prasad, just make sure that there is something left for the guy coming behind you. You know, our instructions are very practical, simple. So based on our level, we need to follow like that. Okay, so idea here is we start with what we have. Nature should not be shunned, but the same nature which becomes our instrument should not be our limitation. That's the point here. Okay, Prabhupada did say we should engage in services that suits our nature, but we should not limit it to doing only that. If we do that, spreading the movement will be difficult. Okay, because as we do this starting from there, then our capacity increases. Now we have to take the next step forward, next step forward, next step forward. Then our whole sum total of all of our services increases. If everyone sits in the same room, looks at each other, same temple room, looks at each other, movement. Gopinath Bhagwan ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Samaved Gaur Bhakta Vrind ki jai. Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki.